Hello and welcome to the video. Today I'm going to take you through my top 5 exercises for you to grow your forearms. Now, before I get started, there are a few things that I quickly need to say. The first one is that forearms unfortunately are massively determined by genetics. Similar to calves, you will find that there are many people who have amazing forearms who don't even train them. They'll just be doing general like back training and pulls, and their forearms will get developed just from having to grip the implements they're using. If you're watching this video, you are probably not in that luxurious position, but you might find it hard to develop your forearms, but I firmly believe that the exercises in this video are your best chance of getting big, well-rounded forearms. And the second thing to say is that the things I have looked for from each exercise in this video, my criteria for judgment, have been slightly different to usual. So if you have kept up with this top 5 exercise for mass series, you will have heard me say many times at the beginning that there are 4 things I look for from an exercise. How much of a stretch the muscle gets, how much of a contraction the muscle gets, how isolated the muscle is, and how heavy you can load the muscle. With forearms, forearms are actually a group of muscles. They are just around your forearm. So they actually do multiple different joint actions at the wrist. They help with supination, they help with pronation, they help with cupping and contracting your forearm, and they help with extending your wrists. So that means that the stretched portion of some of the heads of the forearm, some sides of the forearm, is the contracted portion for different heads. So no one exercise will have a great stretch on the whole forearm, and no one exercise will have a great contraction on the whole forearm. That also means that no one exercise will isolate all of the forearm heads. It might isolate one aspect of the forearm. Because of that, this list, instead of it being a normal tier ranking of the 5th exercise being a bit worse and then getting progressively better to the 1st exercise, all 5 of these exercises are great for developing the forearms, and they will address the different heads of the forearm. So instead of having a list that's getting better on the merit of how it develops one singular muscle, it's actually trying to address different areas of the forearm. So they will still, some of them have better ranges of motion, some of them are isometrics, some you can load heavier, some do get a great contraction for the area of the forearm they're targeting, but it is slightly different to, for instance, chest training, where there is a good stretch position and a good contracted position for the whole chest. So without further ado, let's get to it. So coming in spot number 5 is general grip training, specifically with wide grip implements. So things like axle bars, things like fat grips. You can get dedicated like square axle bars and square dumbbells that have like a thick grip to help work on your grip strength. Training that grip and grip strength will help develop your overall forearm very well. This is often how people who don't specifically train their forearms help develop their forearms. They just do other exercises that require grip strength, and that helps develop their forearms. So it is a great way for you to use alongside maybe some of the other exercises in this list, which specifically are more forearm isolation and forearm only exercises. You could use general grip training alongside that, things like in deadlifts, in lat pull downs, in farmers holds and farmers walks. If you don't use grips for assistance, you will help grow your forearms. Coming in at spot number 4 are gripper trainers. So things like the Captain of Crush, that is a brand of gripper training that is very high quality, is well known within the grip strength world. If you can do the Captain of Crush 3, you have a very strong grip. Grippers are primarily designed to help you with your grip strength. However, they will help develop the forearms great. They are putting the hand through a range of motion, and my advice would be to use your wrist in different angles to help isolate and target different heads of your forearm. So if you were to use your hand in neutral with a gripper, it mainly trains the grip strength. If you then put your hand into a cupped position, you have started to contract the underside of your forearm, and when you grip all the way in, you get a great contraction down the underside of your forearm, and you will help grow that side. The underside of your forearm is the largest head of the forearm muscle. It's where most of the meat is, so it is a great head to try and isolate and try and grow, but I would also do it in conjunction with the other side of your forearm. So if you were to bend your wrist backwards and extend your wrist, you are now contracting the back of your forearm more, and you could do gripper training there as well. It's slightly less effective than on the cupped side because you're contracting all the way in and the fingers contract this way as well. So when you bend back, you're contracting the forearm a bit, but the fingers are still contracting the opposite way because your fingers don't bend that way. But it will help to develop the back side of your forearm. That is the side that has slightly smaller muscle bellies compared with the underside of the forearm, but I would train both to help increase the overall width of the forearm. So I would use gripper training to try and hit either of those heads or both of those heads in conjunction with each other, but pick one. If you stay in this mid zone and try and hit the general forearm, you're probably going to fatigue just your grip strength and your hand before anything. Whereas if you decide to pick one of the heads of the forearm and train that, I would advise doing that with grippers, and they can be a great addition to your forearm training. And coming in spot number 3 are supinations / pronations. So the best version of these are with a machine. It is highly unlikely that your gym has that machine unless your gym is an arm wrestling gym. Arm wrestlers do all of the movements we've talked about today. The forearm is a huge aspect of arm wrestling, and being strong with the wrist through many ranges of motions and angles is very strong. So it is very important in arm wrestling. So if you have access to an arm wrestling gym, they might have a supinator and pronating machine. They're the best for doing this exercise. It's the smoothest, it's the best line of resistance, and you can load it the heaviest. However, if you don't have access to that, you can rig up a setup with just a strap. You could do it with a band, but the band will have chaotic tension. It will sort of jump up and down. So ideally, you have some sort of a strap. If you manage to pick up one of these just from a hardware store and took it into the gym with you, that would do. It's obviously light and easy to carry the strap. And the way you do it is if you put the strap coming from the outside of your body in across the underside of your thumb and out, you will contract against the weight and work on pronation, and the other way round for supination. So you have the weight on the inside, the strap coming up and over the back side of your thumb, you will work on supination. When you work on pronation, you target the pronator. That is a head of the forearm down by the elbow on the underside. But when you do pronations, in general, you will target that underside and inside of the forearm massively. So I would use pronations for them, and supinations are the other way round. So you hit the sort of back side of the forearm very well. Overall, pronations and supinations are a very unique exercise and a fantastic way for training their respective heads of the forearm. And coming in spot number 2 are reverse wrist curls. Reverse wrist curls are the version of wrist curls you have with your hand facing downwards, where you allow the wrist to drop down and contract backwards to contract the backside of your forearm. Reverse wrist curls are great because they isolate the backside of the forearm very well. Not the whole forearm, as I discussed, it's impossible to do that, but the head of the forearm that they target is the backside of the forearm, and they isolate that very well. You can also load it very well for the fact that the tension is placed directly on the forearm. Obviously, exercises like general grip training, when doing like farmer's holds without any grips to help you grip the bar, that will be loaded heavier. However, the reverse wrist curl, all of the weight and tension is being placed on the rear side of the forearm, so the weight proportionally is better. The load on the actual forearm is better, and you can still load this exercise objectively pretty heavy. The stretch on the forearm's pretty good, but your wrist is often used to going into that range of motion anyway, so you won't feel that much of a stretch on the rear side of the forearm, but the contraction is fantastic. Very rarely in life are you ever pushing with your wrist backwards against something. You push forwards quite a lot, but you almost never pull or push your wrists backwards against some sort of weight. So you will feel the backside of your forearm very well with reverse wrist curls. The contraction in particular will hit the backside of the forearm very well. Now, you've probably guessed exercise number 1. That is regular wrist curls. They are basically tied with exercise number 2, reverse wrist curls. I just put them in exercise number 1 because they hit a slightly larger head of the forearm, which is that underside of the forearm. So if you were only to train one, for some reason, I would train the regular wrist curl because that will help grow the larger muscle head of your forearms and help get your forearms bigger because it's training a bigger muscle head. But I would definitely train both of these in conjunction with one another. What is very important when doing any variation of wrist curls is having your forearm supported. So if you are trying to pick up a weight and either do a reverse wrist curl or a regular wrist curl in the middle of the air, your biceps are doing lots of work. They are isometrically holding the weight in position. It is basically just going to be a bicep exercise. So you need to find some sort of surface, like a bench is the easiest way to do it. Place your arms on with your wrists, just your wrists hanging over the edge. Don't have lots of your forearm hanging over the edge. Have the pad all the way up to your wrists, and then whatever variation of wrist curls you are doing, allow the weight to just hang over the edge and curl up. You can also do this exercise with cables. You can load it in whatever way you want. So you can use a barbell. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Or dumbbells if you buy the benches and dumbbells, just having the dumbbells hanging down and contracting. But you can use a cable. The only important thing to do then is to make sure that your forearm is at 90 degrees to whatever angle the cable comes in at. So when you have the cable coming from a low cable, if you're wanting to do reverse wrist curls, for instance, you don't want to have your arms straight because then there's almost no tension at the bottom except, and you only get the tension from the cable at the top. So you need to make sure that your forearm's then at 90 degrees to the cable so that it's pulling for the stretch better and the contraction better. The same with regular wrist curls, but you can use cables. They sort of complicate things with the line of resistance, making sure that your forearm's at 90 degrees to the cable to get a better line of resistance through the range of motion. So for ease, I would advise just using free weights. Just do barbell or dumbbell wrist curls. Wrist curls I do find the most effective way to train the forearms because they take the forearm through the best range of motion for whatever head of the forearm you're trying to hit. They also can be loaded very well, and they do isolate the head that they are hitting very well. Obviously not the entire forearm at once, as that is not possible. So I hope you, that is it for today's video. I hope you did in fact enjoy the video. If you did, drop it a like, drop it a comment, subscribe, click the bell, all of that good stuff. There will be a link to my coaching services in the description. If you don't want to have to bother researching the best exercises and coming up with your own programming and trying to keep yourself accountable and making it work with all the other stresses of life, if you want somebody to just take care of your training for you, I am here. Anyway, check that out in the link in the description. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.